how is it meaning bearing? How is what meaning bearing? Okay, let's be serious. Whether designs or illustrations, whether they are frivolous or life-changing, what we visually communicate is not passive art. It has a purpose. The designs or illustrations we craft have meaning. Our aesthetic decisions affect how real people find meaning within the visual language we use and the compositions we make. Let's see how. In Season 2, we spent a lot of video hours framing semiotics around what the target audience will recognise. Charles Sanders Peirce does state that nothing is a semiotic sign until it is interpreted as a sign. So let's quickly unpack that key statement. It is crucial to changing your framing and understanding of what semiotics is. Nothing, a sign, interpreted. Firstly, a semiotic sign is not signage, but signage does use semiotics. I spent the first episode of Season 2 addressing this, so I'll not repeat myself. If this video is still confusing you, pause this episode and rewatch Season 2, Episode 2.1, why semiotic signs are not signage, but signage uses semiotics. So let us instead focus on nothing, sign, interpreted. Our key word here is perception, the perception of meaning bearing. Whether you like it or not, whether you realise it or not, and whether you accept it or not, humans can read meaning into anything. We seem to be hardwired this way. An evolutional survival trait possibly? My working hypothesis at play here? That meant we visually scanned for patterns and shapes to give us the edge on hunting or fleeing from animals in our distant hunter-gatherer past. We perceive these shapes and patterns as possible meaning-bearing clues, which will provide us valuable information so that we can make decisions and take actions. This is good news for us in the creative industries and for learning to apply Peirce's semiosis, as what we do in visual communication design in our designs and illustrations is easier by bringing the audience closer to your ideation phase. So let us look at the three unpacked words again with this understanding now in place. Nothing, sign, interpreted. As designers and illustrators, we do create something. So when Peirce says nothing, he is meaning that there is a shift in a perceptual state between nothing and something. There's always a moment before you recognise something and the moment after you recognise something. Peirce uses the term firstness to describe this perception state of recognising something for something. Before recognition, you ignore what is there of having no meaning value to you. Once recognised, whatever the something is has now a meaning value to you. You have perceived it as a meaning-bearing visual entity. Stephen Skaggs in his 5 Signs book calls this advisent. Get it? But it is in plain sight. In this general example I have just used, the emphasis that the meaning-bearing visual entity was already there, in plain sight. But until recognition, it remains unperceived. Now this could be a design or illustration or visual elements within both. More on this throughout Season 3. By not being perceived, it's not the same as not having the capacity to bear meaning to someone. If Season 2 focused on how creatives can semiotically hack their approaches to attract the attention of their target audience, then we will now focus on the semiotic encoding of meaning. The emphasis here is on encoding and not making semiotic signs. My gift to the creatively confused. Forget about doing semiotics and instead think about semiotically aligning what you already creatively are doing to your audience. Honestly, you will thank me for this change in your attitude to semiotics. I guarantee that in small, uncontrolled ways, you are already working semiotically. What I mean by this is that at the fundamental technical level of what we design or illustrate, every mark, line, colour, shape, etc. we use has the potential charge of meaning bearing. In Peircean terms, this happens in the phenomenologically perceptual state of firstness at the iconic representation level. All it takes is for one of those small iconic visual entities or combination of them to be perceived as resembling something familiar to the target audience for the audience to interpret the something as something they know or have experienced. This perception is obviously at the subconscious level, but we will now examine the 3 Peircean phases of interpretation. If Season 2 was focused on who interprets, then we now turn to how interpretation is formed. This has an important bearing on how you, creatives, understand how to semiotically encode in order to fully enhance how you visually communicate. As a designer-centric analog term, I have superimposed the more creatively accessible term interpretation over Peirce's obtuse philosophical term interpretant. Do you remember we have discussed the pragmatic semiotic termination flow to explain how semiosis works? Semiosis, or sign action power, is predicated on the concept to be communicated, how that is represented, and how it affords its interpretation. If successfully facilitated, then the interpreter will successfully interpret the concept. Peirce's terms for each of these three stages are object, representamen, interpretant. Semiosis 101's designer-centric translation is concept, representation, interpretation. Which do you, creators, prefer? Yup. This is why Semiosis 101 exists. As I said at the start of this episode, Peirce's language is obtuse. Obtuse in the sense that when heard, it is indistinctly felt as anything meaningful. Peirce's words are carefully chosen and created as they describe exactly what Peirce intends them to mean. Unfortunately, these words are certainly not designer-centric, so that is why you need Semiosis 101, okay? Let's get the difficulty out of the way and we can then continue to semiosis the designer-centric way. We will be returning to Peirce's terms this season, so we will first translate and explore the interpretant. I've used the analog term interpretation for interpretant and discussed the role of the target audience as interpreters. But do not confuse the interpretation interpretant for the interpreter. In semiosis' sign action, the interpretant is the effect the semiotic sign produces on the interpreter. In the case of design or illustration, the visual entity that is meaning-bearing, if perceived, if interpreted, will construct the intended meaning in the mind of the interpreter. The subconscious effect of interpreting what is semiotically encoded has profound ramifications for the visual communicator, as well as the interpreter. It means that the target audience can be greatly benefited from the creative's aesthetic choices if those meaning-bearing choices can be semiotically strengthened to become communicatively richer. We can semiotically strengthen the semiotic representations we encode by understanding the three phases in which semiotic interpretation happens. Peirce defines these three phases which affect semiotic interpretation as immediate, dynamic, and final. So what are they? We covered 4 conditions that a semiotic sign had to encompass in Season 2, Episode 2.18. These were very quickly where a semiotic sign must correlate to or represent a concept, have some sense or depth in its representation, articulate something to someone, and mediate itself as a sign through the interrelationship of the 3 conditions. In Season 2, we discussed in depth with examples how the first 2 conditions can be met. In Season 3, we will now discuss the 3rd condition in the context of interpretation in order to semiotically encode meaning. To frame this, we re-enter Peirce's phenomenological states of firstness, secondness, thirdness. For any newbies just joining this discussion, it might be good to watch Season 2 episodes 2.8, 212, 215, 216 after this episode to get a grounding for next week. Why? Well, these 3 states tie into how interpretation is semiotically made and therefore how to semiotically encode. To end this first Season 3 episode, I will frame the 3 discussion points over the next 3 episodes. The immediate stage of the effect of a semiotic sign on interpretation has to be perceived as meaning-bearing and therefore interpretable. That looks familiar. Firstness. Then, at the dynamic stage, once perceived, the interpretation is mediated by the representation, the sign, as a visual entity. This means something. Secondness. Finally, at the final stage of interpretation is formed based on the way that everybody would react to the meaning-bearing visual entity. It is here that any semiotic encoding needs to be successful in communicating the intended concept's meaning, message, idea, etc. Thirdness. Next week, we will explore the immediate stage. Thanks for watching. Check out the other Semiosis 101 episodes, like and share them with your friends. And hit the bell and subscribe buttons to be notified when next week's free Semiosis 101 episode is published. You can also follow Semiosis 101 on the socials for updates. It is at Semiosis 101 on Instagram and Threads. See you all again next week for more Semiosis 101 to help illustrators and designers to enhance your visual communication skills.